Hey everybody, I am Brady Briggs. Welcome to another episode of the Combat Logic.
Yeah. With the lights out, it's so dangerous. Here we are now, entertain us. I'm so stupid and contagious. Here we are now, entertain us. I'm alive.
What's up, guys? Here today, obviously, to talk about UFC 275. And man, what a special event this turned into. So, first fight that jumps off the page was Silvana Gomez Juarez, who is a 37-year-old talent coming off of 2 defeats, and she picks up a first-round knockout. Just as Michael Bisping was saying that she has a really hard right hand, she lands it and, yeah, KOs her opponent Luang Na at 122 of round 1. That was very impressive. Then Kyung Ho Kong and Dana Batgaro, they went to war. They had a really good fight. Brendan Allen versus Jacob Malkoun. Now, this fight was so much closer than I think any of us expected that it was going to be. Brendan Allen is usually known as the wrestler, but Malkoun, man, he took Brendan Allen down and had a lot of time in top position. Allen was able to get up a couple of times, and he was able to take Malkoun down as well in the third round. But it was a very close fight, and Allen was awarded the unanimous decision. I'm glad, but Malkoun for 6-1, man, now 6-2. He's a solid talent because Brendan Allen has a really bright future, and Malkoun absolutely took it to him. Mahashate versus Steve Garcia. This was a really crazy fight, too. It only lasted 74 seconds, but they both hurt each other a number of times until Mahashate lands a nasty overhand right and just completely starches Garcia, face plants him. It wasn't the only face plant KO that we saw in the night either. And Josh Kolobal versus Seungwoo Choi. I was upset to see this because I really love Seungwoo Choi. This was another back and forth war. Kolobal really took it to him. He said before the fight that he wanted to stand on the feet and see how his striking did against Choi's. And I was like, that's not a good idea for you, but I really do hope you do that because, Choi will beat you. And he didn't, man. He really took it to Choi, hurt him a number of times, dropped him a number of times. And Choi cracked Kolobal too a couple times, but his strikes just didn't have the same effect that Kolobal's did. And one thing that I really like to see, though, I really wanted to see Choi go 4-1 in his last 5. He's not lost his last 2, 3-4 in the UFC so far. But what I really liked seeing out of this fight is every single time he got hurt, he would get back up and he would start swinging wildly. Like every time he got up and he just started swinging for the fences trying to get the knockout. That was super cool to see. That's why he's a really entertaining fighter. Jack Della Maddelena versus Ramazan Emeev. This fight was crazy. Oh, man, this was such a crazy night of fights, man. So Della Maddelena, man, he was the A side coming into this fight, and I was so surprised at that because he's only 1-0 in the UFC, and that one win was against someone who was 4-0. He had 4 times the experience as his opponent going into that fight, and Ramazan Emeev has about 6 times the amount of experience that his debut opponent had, and twice as much experience as he has. So I was like, man, Emeev, he's a former M1 middleweight champion. He's the last man to defeat who I think should be fighting for the Bellator middleweight title against Gegard Mousasi, Anatoly Tokov. It's the last guy to beat him. Like, this is a really tough test for Maddelena. And, dude, Maddelena passed with flying colors. So Emeev comes out, and he's looking sharp on the feet at first. And he's landing some nice punches, honestly. And he ends up getting the takedown. He takes Maddelena down. He gets him locked in an anaconda choke, which is so tight, man. And, like, Maddelena tried to stand up out of it, and it looked like it might work, but Emeev dragged him right back down to the mat with it. And, dude, he's able to just get his hand and unhook the clamp, get back to his feet, and that's where he really got going with his boxing. Those beautiful combinations we saw in his debut and on the Contender Series, he followed it up last night at UFC 275, man, because, wow, those shovel hooks that he was landing that dropped Emeev and then the punches following, like, he is going to be so fun to watch in the future. He's only 26 years old, too. He is such a fun fighter to watch. Like, wow. I can't believe he just stopped Emeev like that either, because Emeev, as I said, he's a former champion in another organization, former multi-time champion, mind you. He actually lost his belt after winning it. He won it and defended it, then he lost it. And then he beat the guy that beat him for the belt, and he went on another pretty long title reign of like 4 defenses before coming over to the UFC. He was 5-2 in the UFC, fighting guys like Anthony Martin and David Zawada, Danny Roberts, some pretty fucking good talents. And all 7 of those fights went the distance. Well, Maddelena just finished him in the first round. Like, beautiful, beautiful performance by him. And the same could be said about his fellow Aussie, fellow welterweight Aussie, Jake Matthews. Because, wow, dude, Jake Matthews hasn't fought in over a year. Okay, Andre Fialho is 2-1 this year. He came to the UFC, lost his debut to Michel Pereira in a spirited effort, but lost his debut to Michel Pereira. No shame there. He's won his last 5 straight. And then he followed that up with 2 first-round knockouts. And we're like, man, this dude can box. Like, his boxing is seriously good. He knocked out Miguel Beza, who's a really highly touted prospect, and then Cameron Van Camp. And he did all of this, in 2022. So it's like, man, he might get his 3rd straight win before the half-year point is up. Because Jake Matthews, he hasn't fought in a while. He hasn't fought in over a year. The last time he fought, he got submitted by Sean Brady in the 3rd round. He is 6-2 at welterweight, but dude, since moving up to welterweight, it's like he wasn't quite the same fighter. And he said after the fight that every Jake Matthews fight you've seen before is like 50% of him. And I truly believe that. I was like, yeah, dude, that's what I'm saying. Like, what happened to you? Because like I said in the pre-fight, he was this dominant prodigy when he first came to the sport. Okay, like he racked up a 7-0 record on the regional circuit, improved that to 9-0 in his first 2 UFC fights, beat a pro boxer in his first fight, just dominated him, and ended up getting a mounted triangle choke in the 3rd round. I was so impressed with it. And then he submitted Wagner Hocha in his sophomore UFC effort, who's like a multi-time world jiu-jitsu champion. He's a 4th degree black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And it's like, wow, he's only like 20 years old and he's already doing this shit. He lost his next fight to James Vick, who just so happens he was a problem for a lot of people not too long ago. And then he follows this up with another 2 dominant finishes over Akbar Ariola and Johnny Case. Dude, if you go back and watch those 2 fights, Johnny Case had a lot of hype on him 5-6 years ago when this fight happened. The Ariola fight is, man, so dominant. He took him down and he just beat the living shit out of him for 10 minutes until it was stopped in between the 2nd and 3rd rounds. Followed this up with back-to-back losses to Kevin Lee and Andrew Holbrook. The Holbrook fight was a split decision. He could have gotten the nod in it, but losing to Kevin Lee, there's really no shame there. Dude, Kevin Lee used to be a prodigy, man. He's turned into one of the bigger flukes the sport has seen, but he was a true prodigy when he was a little younger. And the Andrew Holbrook fight, he didn't really look great in either, but, he could have gotten the nod or he could have lost it. It was really close. And since then, he went up to welterweight, but he'd gone 6-2. 5 of those wins were decisions. So he's just not the dominant fighter we were used to seeing, like I said before. And he got submitted in his 2 losses. Like, he's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's a great grappler. And just like I said, Kolobal said he wanted to strike with Seungwoo Choi, and I was like, yes, I want to see that. Jake Matthews said he was going to go toe-to-toe with Andre Fialho going into this fight. And I was like, no, please don't do that. But dude, he looked so good. This is probably the best performance he's actually ever had in the UFC. And that's really fucking saying something if you saw his early UFC career. Like, wow, dude, he knocked Andre Fialho clean out. And Fialho had so much hype going into this fight. He's so much more active than Matthews. He had actually fought 6 more times after Matthews had his last fight. So Matthews' fight with Sean Brady was in March of 2011. Andre Fialho had 6 fights in between that time and last night when he fought Jake Matthews. Okay. And it didn't matter at all, dude. Jake Matthews, I can't wait to see more of him. Maybe he's, more dedicated now, or he's got it up here in his head more now. I don't know what it is, but man, I really hope, dude, he actually has turned into what I thought he would turn into. And it got to a point where I really didn't think that he was going to amount to much. He was going to be a fluke. And man, that performance last night showed I might have been wrong. He's only 27. He's still getting better. Oh man, it's so exciting. I can't wait to see him fight again. He said he wanted to fight at the Paris event or the London event. Fuck yeah, I want to see it. Weili Zhang and Joanna Jędrzejczyk too. Man, this was sad. This was really sad. Zhang ends up getting a takedown in the first round and beats the living fuck out of Joanna from top position, rains down so many punches and elbows. Like, she's taking so much damage. It's not the first fight, okay, but it's a lot like the first fight because of the tenaciousness and the pace of it. But man, it was contested on the ground, so it's a little bit different. But Joanna's just said, man, her strength was unbelievable. I didn't expect her to be that strong. A lot of people have said that about Weili, in the practice room too, and saying, oh, she's this wicked athlete. She really showed it. And she was looking good on the feet too. They both were. Joanna is able to get up for like the last minute of round one, and the striking is pretty even. She actually ends up hurting Zhang pretty bad with an overhand. With 5 seconds left in the round. And then the second round, midway through it at 2:28 of the round, and she just eats a vicious spinning back fist. She walks right into it and face plants and fight's immediately over. Now, this reminds me of Molly McCann's spinning elbow knockout back at UFC London. And I'm trying to think of which is more impressive, because Molly McCann's was a little more vicious, but because of who Weili did this to, it's like, man, that's seriously impressive. Valentina Shevchenko and Taylor Santos, this was a much different fight than a lot of people expected it to be. And I don't really know why people expected Valentina to just run right through Taylor, because I didn't. Dana White was saying the same thing. No, I will say I didn't think Taylor would look quite as good as she did. Because she really brought the fight to Valentina. Her stand-up was looking decent early on, and Valentina initiates a clinch. Her striking was also looking good early on. But she initiates a clinch, and she goes to take Taylor down, but ends up getting her back taken. And, the entire last minute of the first round, Taylor had her back cranking on her neck trying to get the early finish. Now, Valentina pretty much won the round up until then, but the most significant moments of the round kind of went to Santos. So Santos is able to out-wrestle her the next 2 rounds and take her back for a good amount of those rounds. And then, Valentina starts off the third well. The first half of it, she wins with her striking pretty handily, but she ends up getting taken down again for pretty much the remainder of the round. So it's like, who do you give that round to? Probably Santos. And then the fourth was more of the same, though Valentina was able to stay on the feet a little bit longer. And then in the fifth, I believe Valentina came out and got a takedown of her own and kept Santos on her back. It was a very close fight. It wasn't a robbery. It could have went either way. 48-47 either way. I will say that 149-46 scorecard's pretty disgusting. I don't know how you could score 4 rounds for either of them, but Valentina had perhaps the toughest title defense over tenure. Nonetheless, Valentina is now 23-3 as a professional after a 57-2 kickboxing career, where she won a load of titles there too. She's also 2-0 as a pro boxer. She has a black belt in judo, as well as a master of sport in judo. She has a master of sport in kickboxing, a master of sport in boxing, an international master of sport in Muay Thai, and a second-degree black belt in Taekwondo, as well as a master of sport in Taekwondo. I'd say that's one of the most decorated combat athletes ever. Okay, so mix all that. Now she's 23-3 as a professional mixed martial artist. She avenged one of those losses. Her first loss, she avenged in her one of her title defenses against Liz Carmouche. Her other 2 losses come to who most people think is the women's GOAT, Amanda Nunes. In that first fight, she lost the first 2 rounds and then came on in the third strong. Honestly, it could have been a draw. That was a dominant third round for her. And then the second time, she lost a 5-round split decision, and a lot of people think she won that fight. It was very close. That also could have gone either way, but a lot of people think she won that fight. And with how much smaller she is than Amanda, who is also the featherweight champion, it was, a little more than impressive. So she wanted to win this fight and go back up to 135, where Juliana Pena is now the champion. And, well, Juliana Pena also lost to Valentina Shevchenko, who armbarred her in the second round in 2017. I think a lot of people didn't expect that out of Valentina. And she showed way back then she had a really good ground game and submitted a wicked grappler in Juliana Pena. It was super impressive. So she has a win over the 135-pound champion. And if Amanda beats her, beats Pena in the rematch, well, then we got a trilogy on our hands that I think a lot of people would be picking Valentina going into, because Amanda doesn't have the cardio that Taylor Santos does. Her combat sports record entirely is now 82-5, which is just remarkable. And then Yuri Prochazka and Glover Teixeira. Oh my God, what a fucking fight. I don't think anyone, literally anyone, expected this. Like, oh my God, it was crazy. Glover took all of Yuri's best shots, man. And some of them hurt him. And man, it was such a crazy fight. A lot of them hurt him, but he was able to regain his composure if he was dropped. He took Yuri down a lot. And dude, he secured Mount a number of times, rained down some heavy punches, and almost submitted him a couple times. Yuri, his defense is so much better than I thought it was. He said he was happy for this fight because it gave him the opportunity to train grappling more. And I was like, dude, if you didn't train grappling regularly before, forget grappling Glover Teixeira on the mat, man. You're going to get tapped easily. Dude, his defense is so good. Like, I am just amazed. And he ended up reversing positions and getting on top of Glover at times. It was, dude, one of the most back and forth fights I've ever seen. Probably the best light heavyweight fight ever. Chael Sonnen said that. He was like, dude, this surpasses Gustafsson versus Daniel Cormier. It passes Gustafsson versus Jones 1. And dude, I agree, man. Like, Glover Teixeira was 33-7 going into this fight. He won his last 6 fights. He almost got knocked out in 4 or 5 of those, literally. And he ended up coming back and win to finally recapture the title, or not recapture, to finally capture the title. He's a true Cinderella man of the sport. What's more, 5 of those wins came via finish, and 28 of his 33 overall wins also came via finish with 18 knockouts. Okay. And then you got Yuri Prochazka, who is 28-3-1, former Rising champion. 25 of those wins by knockout, 17 of them in the first round, 2 by submission. So he has 28 wins. He's finished 27 of them. Okay. Glover has 33 wins. He's finished 28 of them. This was a truly spectacular showcase of mixed martial arts. And dude, with 28 seconds left in the fight, I didn't think this fight would go the distance, and technically it didn't. It kind of did, man. It went 24.5 minutes, because I didn't think either of these guys would be able to take each other's best for more than a couple rounds. And man, I was wrong. Oh my God, what a fight. They both got hurt so many times. Glover was really starting to box Yuri up in the 5th round, who was just absolutely exhausted at that point. But dude, each time he was dropped, he was able to circle out. He was able to get up. He ends up on his back, then ends up reversing it, getting on top. Dude, it was like such a crazy fight. And he sinks in a rear naked choke without hooks. So really, it was a bulldog choke. It goes down as a rear naked choke. It was really a bulldog choke. And dude, he submits Glover Teixeira. Like, holy fuck, man. Glover Teixeira is probably the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner to ever compete at 205 pounds. Okay, there is some good ones, but my God, that was remarkable. He submitted Glover Teixeira. Glover was just too tired to defend it, and man, he gets choked out. Like, I think all he had to do was beat the clock in this one. He was up on the scorecards. Wow, what a performance by Yuri Prochazka. What a performance by Glover Teixeira. This is one of the best fights I've ever seen. Like, that's why the title suggests UFC 275 was a truly special night. Yuri Prochazka is now 29-3-1 as a professional with 28 finishes, and he just submitted the best grappler. Took his best shots too. Like, Glover took his best shots. Well, he took Glover's best shots too. And I said that going into this fight. Not many people were giving Glover a chance on the feet. And I was like, dude, he's like an MMA version of Mike Tyson with a wicked wrestling game and a wicked jiu-jitsu game. How could you not think he could knock Yuri out? Yuri was 22-1-1 in his last 24 coming into this one. And he did avenge his last loss too. But his last loss was to King Mo, who knocked him out unconscious because of his style, because he doesn't always defend himself. But man, like, he has a fucking chin. Holy shit. Now, what does this set up? Does this set up him versus Jan Blachowicz, former champion? Because, he won his last fight against Alexander Rakic. Or does it set up Yuri in his first title defense versus the Magomed Ankalaev versus Anthony Smith winner? I don't know. I'd be pretty happy to see either of those fights, to be honest with you. I guess I'll end it with Joanna Jędrzejczyk following this defeat, retired from MMA. I don't think it's very surprising. I think it was coming. She hasn't been as active lately. She seems to only want really big fights. And after 2 straight defeats to Weili Zhang, the latter, ending in a vicious knockout like that, she retires from MMA as a 6-time world champion in the UFC with a record of 16-5. She too, like Valentina, had a long kickboxing career where she fought Valentina 3 times, and she also lost to her 3 times, as well as an MMA and a flyweight title fight. But she went 37-3 as an amateur and 27-3 as a professional, winning a load of championships in both, and that she retires with a complete combat sports record of 80-11. So thank you, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, for the incredible, illustrious, legendary career that you've given us. It was very fun to watch. I think I'll end it with that. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good one.
Hey! Hey! Hey!